and then now it says it's switched to the Hangout on air as live, and it says stop broadcast. With that, William, Philip mentioned it. Can you talk a little bit about the hashtag Comments for Kids and kind of what its purpose is and how it's evolved over the years?
Oh, absolutely. Several years ago, I was on a rant on Twitter because I was having a difficult time getting people outside my local community to leave comments on my student blog posts. Regardless of how many times that I had those conversations with my students about their writing and what they were writing about, I didn't feel like it was as impactful as it could be. In reality, if the teacher's the only one reading the blog, it's not much different than writing it in a paper journal. So I was on a rant, and when my friend suggested that I do something about it, we created this hashtag, kind of threw a couple around, created this hashtag, and started promoting it. I created a blog that deals specifically with commenting with student blogs, gives some ideas and things like that. It's commentsforkids.com. But what I've discovered over several years of following, commenting, and blogging with student work is that the one-off comments, while they are exciting for students to get, they're not as valuable as creating relationships. So I try to encourage people that are blogging with students to find other student blogs to share with and to kind of partner up with. And I also would really like for students to be able to find other students that have similar interests, because one of the things that has happened through social media for me as an adult is that I found people that I can share a lot of things with, a lot of interests that locally I don't have anyone I can share that with. I call those the nerd things, and when I say nerd things, I don't mean just technology and things like that. I'm talking about those things that we're really, really passionate about, but it's not necessarily mainstream. For example, Legos or Pokemon or video games, things like that. And what I would really like to see and hope to foster is kids creating their own online tribes centered around things that they're really interested in. Now, one of the things that requires the teacher to do is to allow students to write on their blogs things that they're interested in, not just things assigned by the teacher. And of course, the problem with that is it takes quite a bit of time. So, it's balancing that tight walk that's really important. But for me, the most valuable thing about social media, blogging, Facebook, whatever, is this ability to create a community that we can share with that we may not be able to do locally. And if I can encourage students to look for that, I think that some of them will be able to get to the place where many of us are right now, where we are feel very supported in our interests.
Philip, to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, you talked about how you have your kids doing the social media, and you've done the blogging in the past. How have you seen the I guess relationships grow between like your school or your class or your students and those outside, as opposed to prior to having these tools available?
Well, I think the connections are certainly important, and I think I teach at a very privileged school. My kids are well off. It's a pretty elite school, and I think one of the things that they've been able to see is just kind of that not everybody's like them, that they've been able to see a different world and understand that there are people who don't have what they have. We're in a school, we're one-to-one laptop. I've got all the technology I could ever want. We have interacted with schools that have, 5 computers in a room, no laptops, they're just computers, desktops. We've interacted with people that just don't have a whole lot. So that's been really good for my students. I would also say, there have been a few that have really developed a couple of neat friendships, almost pen palish type things. that have come from it, from kids who did kind of make that connection like William talked about, where they both had something they were very passionate about, and they kind of got to corresponding back and forth about it. So that's been kind of fun. I think we've had a lot of lessons and a lot of things we've had to grow about along the way. Made a lot of mistakes along the way. Had to delete a lot of posts along the way. But you know, it's part of the growing and learning experience, I think. So I'm not worried about it. I got other people helping me watch it too, which I think is important when I've got 80 of them all able to kind of post what they need to post and when they want to post it. So.
Do you guys have any questions for them? Anything you guys want to throw out in closing?
Well, yeah.
Oh, hold on, we got a question.
Yeah, so if you're a school teacher and your kids post something inappropriate, it's already out there if it's a live broadcast before you have the ability to delete it, and then you're liable, right?
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah. Junior high, I moderate my students' posts before they go out, and I also moderate their comments. Now, when we go to another blog, obviously that's a problem. But what you can do is you can get into contact with the teacher that's over that school or that classroom blog, and tell them that you're going to be bringing your students over for them to comment, and make sure that they have comment moderation on. Honestly, I've never had an issue with my students leaving inappropriate comments on other students' blog posts.
Yeah.
I have had problems with them leaving good comments. So we do focus on how to make a good comment. And my idea is that a comment leads to a conversation. A blog post is an invitation to a conversation, and a comment is the acceptance of that invitation. So the idea is that comment needs to continue that conversation if possible. Sometimes the blog posts don't lend to that, but that's really the goal. I think when I leave comments, I try to further the conversation that way.
Yeah, I would say most of what I have had to delete has been more of a social media, a Twitter post or a picture, something like that didn't need to go out. As far as what my kids have blogged, I've always tried to moderate, just making sure that there's nothing bad. But I've also spent a lot of time front-loading them and saying, this is how you have to behave. Remember, this is permanent. Your mother may see this. Your grandmother may see this. The principal's going to see this. You know, these people are behind checking. You know, it's not like you have just free reign. And we have kids make mistakes on it all the time. It just happens. You know, they post a picture being a goofball, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with being a goofball most of the time, although at that moment you shouldn't have been being a goofball. So, you know, it's a learning opportunity, and a lot of good conversations come out of that. I have not ever had a child that I know of that has gone on someone else's blog and written something inappropriate. Haven't had anything like that. Ours has been more like you were supposed to be reading, and instead, you know, you were, you know, I don't know, you know, picking at somebody, or, you know, it's been pretty minor stuff for the most part. I've never had anything really, really egregious that I'd be worried about. So.
Yeah, I think blogging, especially moderated blogging and commenting, is a great way for students to learn that there's different voices that they need to have in different situations, and the voice, the conversations that you have with your friend in private is not the same way you want to treat people in public necessarily. And I think that when it's moderated, then you can have those conversations with them. For example, I've had students that have inside jokes, so they leave an inside joke on a student blog post, and if you're not in on the joke, it looks like it's an inappropriate thing to say. So we have those conversations about, you have to be really explicit online because people can't, they don't understand the context, and they can't see the intent. They don't have body language. They don't have the voice to hear And those are really good things for students to learn before they really get heavily into social media. It's much better they learn it in the classroom than it is they learn it in the wild, where it can have some serious consequences.
Yeah, and I would say that for social media, we're using a class account. It's not their own private, personal account to give them, because mine are 11, 12 years old when they're starting with me, so they're still just kind of getting a feel for that. Many of them, although a few do have their own devices, many of them don't, and they're not on the social media yet. So it's a good introduction for them to get it in a spot where it's kind of watched and controlled, and we do have lots of conversations about what's appropriate and what's right, and that doesn't mean you can't ever be silly. It doesn't mean you can't ever have fun with it, because we certainly do that, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we are being kind and we're being appropriate and thoughtful, if nothing else, at least thoughtful.
So did that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Other questions? Other closing comments from either of you two?
I'd just like to say thanks for bringing me in. I'm a man of leisure for the next 6 weeks or so I have the opportunity to do things like this. Yay, summer. Woo!
Yeah, and you got me out of mowing the yard. I still have to go weed eat. So. Somebody else mowed the yard for me, so now I just got to weed eat.
Nice.
Stay a little bit longer so we can get you out of weeding. We can keep you here.
Yeah, let's go a little longer. No.
Gentlemen, we really appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and look forward to catching up with you guys soon.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Cool. Thank you.
So I'm going to click stop.